Hello everyone, and welcome to another Tamagotchi Nano review video. This time I'm going to be reviewing the Tourabutchi, which is the Touken Ranbu collaboration with Tamagotchi. Now, straight off the bat, I just want to say that I absolutely love the way that Bandai have been releasing their nanos lately. I was starting to feel a little bit bored with how they're all basically the same, and each level basically just had the character change and the gameplay and functionality remained the same. However, with the more recent releases, that being the Toy Story Nano and the Tiny Tan BTS Nano, honestly, it has started to change more than just this is the exact same thing with different characters. So, for starters, on the Tiny Tan one, and as I mentioned in my video for that, you start off as a door, and the door opens and then shows the character, basically. With the Toy Story Nano, it's more or less the same, except the ways that you interact with it with touching and playing, the animation changes depending on what character you have, which makes sense, you play with them different ways because they're different toys. As for the Tourabutchi, it takes it even in a bigger step, where you start off as a blacksmith, and if you want to see the gameplay of the blacksmith, I did that in my Tourabutchi unboxing video, so check that out after this video. And about 3 hours after you're the blacksmith or so, it evolves into... Now, I did mention in my unboxing video I'm not familiar with this franchise, but your character is like a little cat fox thing, which is very cute, reminds me of the fox character from Inuyasha a little bit. I'm sorry, I don't know the characters' names. I'm not familiar with this franchise, but I do love this Nano. So I will edit in a clip of the gameplay when you're the cat, because again, it differs to the blacksmith stage as well as the stage that I have at the moment. Roast me in the comments if I end up not editing that in. I did record it, it's not fantastic good quality because I was at work in the office on my lunch break at the time and didn't have my recording set up and light box, but basically there's different menus altogether, different food and different games, the game being a little bit of a different take on the dancing game that is in quite a few nanos. You have to press a button, however instead of saying A or B, it just signifies left or right, which is a little bit confusing because it means left by this button and right by that button, and it just points it. But I kept on pressing this button, which is C, which is cancel, which is not a valid option. So the end button being cancel/C. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool that you started off with a stage that was different, and then the second stage was also different in terms of the ways you can interact with it. And then once you're done with that stage, you become a person, and then after a little bit on that stage, you kind of get an option to select something. Now, the kanji is really smushed in the Tourabutchi, which is probably my only negative about it, other than the weird fact that they've chosen to use two colours to colour the shell. But once you get to this stage, which I believe is the final stage, your options again change. So you get food and you get the games. So the food being just standard food. We go back to icons for this one. I don't know why we're splitting between icons as well as words. I kind of prefer when the nanos have these icons. It makes them more accessible to other people. And also, I find the kanji, like, just a little bit smushed together. Like, you kind of have to squint to even read what the kanji says. So then we'll go to this one, and we've got 3 games to play, so I'll show you off the games now. And that's probably my other negative, the fact that it's got characters as well, and this is a button mashing one, which is always my favourite. You've got characters as in just little drawings as icons to signify with the options, but you've also got words in kanji, which doesn't make it particularly accessible for people who are not fluent in Japanese, or people like me who just for some reason know kanji, but they have trouble identifying them when they're smushed together. So someone who's not fluent but knows kanji, but their recognition is like dependent on font style basically, which is something I need to work on. Like, that's on me. But it just makes it not as accessible as the other ones. So yeah, the first option is my usual mashing button one. So again, the games are more or less the same from all the other Tamagotchi Nanos. This one, I believe, this one is the same as the dance one, which we have as a cat, or fox, or whatever it is. And I think I prefer when it says what letters it is, rather than the arrows. Which is kind of weird that they went with arrows because they have words for other things, so why would they not just continue using words? It just feels like a little bit weird there. Which is, I guess, another negative about the icons and words rather than just icons, which is something that a lot of the Tamagotchi Nanos have had, which makes them, again, much more accessible to the international audience. And speaking of which, I loved the Geordie Tamagotchi, but I don't know any Korean at all. I don't recognise any words of Korean. I don't know any words of Korean, so that one was a bit of a struggle for me, but I did like it, and you can kind of learn the muscle memory of it, and because they all have the same layout, they all, like, you know that the first option's food, the second option is game, except in the blacksmith stage where the game was feeding, basically. And then there's this one, which is one of those timing ones, which are my least favourite. You have to press the button, I missed, exactly when it has a little exclamation mark. And I'm actually always the worst at these because I'm so trigger happy. And then when I try not to be trigger happy with the buttons, I end up missing it. But overall, the games are more or less the same as the pool of games you typically get in a Tamagotchi Nano, except some of them have their own kind of spin on it. The dance game, as I'm calling it, uses the arrows instead of the letters, as I mentioned, and then we have that timing game, which instead of it being like only press when it's in the center, you have to press it when the exclamation mark shows. So it's slightly different, but more or less the same mechanic. You also, of course, get the stats check by pressing C, which gets you a nice close-up animation, and you get to see how your character's doing. In terms of the poop equivalent, like instead of poop, you have to clean up LCL on the Avachi, or you have to clean off the toys in the Toy Story Nano. In this one, it's the same as it is in the Jujutsuchi, which is the Jujutsu Kaisen one, and the Demon Slayer Tamagotchi, it's just you're fighting a person. Which I guess makes sense because the main thing I think I know about this franchise is that you're like a sword husband, but that's it, that's all I know. But yeah, so that's, I guess, you can't do any other poop equivalent. I do like how they all have a poop equivalent rather than just actually just cleaning up poo, because it makes a little bit more sense in terms of this being a character that they probably go to the toilet on their own rather than when you're looking after like a pet or something. This is a human. You're helping him out. So that's kind of cool. So in general, this is probably one of my favourite Tamagotchi Nano. Again, I love what Bandai seems to be doing with the Nanos. I was starting to get a little bit burnt out because they all felt the same. They all have the same stages. All the stages were the same. The only difference was which games you'd get, which still, they all have the same mix of games anyway, or a similar mix of games. And the poop equivalents were different depending on what Tamagotchi Nano. But this one, and I guess all the more recent ones in the last year, they've really tried to make each Nano different, rather than just having, this is the same one. All the Demon Slayer ones are still the same, for example, and one of them came out this year. But in terms of my rating, I'm going to have to give it a 10 out of 10 for both ease of use and enjoyment. Again, I don't know this franchise. I know people like this franchise, and I know they like this franchise, well, obviously enough to get a Nano, but even then, I still love this Nano. I feel like it's a great step in the right direction for how Nanos should be. They should be more different than all the other ones, which are more or less very samey. And I feel like a lot of them are very samey, and they don't really change much depending on the character, but this one does. So that's pretty cool. I'm a fan of that, and even if you're not a fan of this franchise, I would recommend picking this one up, just because it's pretty fun. I want more Nanos like this. I hope that they continue making Nanos that are like this, and don't just revert back to the way Nanos were before. If you are a fan of this franchise, you will love this Nano, because it is so good. It's up there with the R2-D2 Nano as being completely unique to the other Tamagotchi Nanos, and I'm a huge fan of that. So yeah, definitely pick up this Nano if you can. it sold out pretty quickly. It even had to have 2 release waves. It was that popular. So hopefully now it's not too hard to get your hands on. I just want more of this. I hope that the next few Nanos, being the Kingdom Hearts Nano and the One Piece Nano, I hope they are the same as this in terms of uniqueness, I guess, if that's even a word I can use. But it is pretty good, except for the shell and the weird inconsistencies of having Japanese text and then the icons. I think that makes it harder to... It's harder to be accessible to a wider audience. But then again, I managed with the Geordie Tamagotchi with just muscle memory. You kind of know that all Tamagotchi Nanos have the same kind of structure of, like, the first one's food, the second one's game, and you don't really need much more than that, I guess. But yeah, I definitely recommend this Nano. It's probably my favourite Nano at the moment, or at least one of. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts about this franchise or about this Nano in general. Let me know what your favourite Nano is in the comments below. Like this video if you like the shell, but only the front part. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I do lots of Tamagotchi reviews, especially Tamagotchi Nano. And of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!